6 months after Ben Carter's sacrifice, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Carter Station and watched ships from a dozen different species dock at the massive space platform. The station hung in space, at the edge of the galaxy, a monument to the young man who had saved all of creation and a symbol of the new cooperation between the restored civilizations. The transformation had been nothing short of miraculous. Within hours of Ben's communication with the cosmic entity, dead worlds across the galaxy had begun showing signs of life again. The Zephyrians were the first to return, their consciousness restored but fundamentally changed by their experience. Then came the Colorians, their crystalline cities once again filled with their harmonic voices. Species after species returned from whatever dimension the entity had transported their minds to, all of them profoundly altered by their brush with cosmic consciousness. "Captain Morrison," came a familiar voice behind him. Jake turned to see Kethavar approaching, but the Zephyrian looked different now. His silver skin had taken on new patterns of light that shifted like aurora across his surface. His eyes held depths of knowledge that had not been there before. "Kethavar, how are the integration studies going?" Jake asked. "Fascinating beyond measure," the Zephyrian replied. "My people have returned with abilities we never possessed before. We can now perceive quantum fluctuations directly, allowing us to manipulate matter at levels previously impossible. But more importantly, we have gained something we never had: true empathy." Jake nodded. Similar changes had occurred in every restored species. The Colorians could now communicate instantly across vast distances through quantum resonance. The Mantis Collective had developed the ability to share memories directly. Each species had gained new capabilities, but they had also gained something more precious: a deeper understanding of other forms of life. "And the humans?" Kethavar asked. "How are your people adapting to their changes?" Jake smiled, though his expression carried a note of wonder and concern. "That's still a mystery. Dr. Rogers has documented some incredible developments. Humans who were present during the restoration are showing enhanced pattern recognition abilities. Some can sense the emotional states of other species with remarkable accuracy. A few have even reported brief moments of what they describe as cosmic awareness." Amy Rogers approached them, carrying a data tablet filled with her latest research. Over the past months, she had become the galaxy's leading expert on post-restoration consciousness studies. Her work was helping all species understand and adapt to their new abilities. "Jake, I just finished testing the latest group of human survivors," Amy said, her voice filled with excitement. "The changes are accelerating. Humans exposed to the entity's restoration field are developing what I can only call quantum intuition. They can sense patterns and connections that should be impossible to detect." "Is that dangerous?" Jake asked, concerned for his people. "I don't think so," Amy replied. "Unlike other species, humans seem to be integrating the cosmic awareness without losing their essential nature. We're still chaotic thinkers, still unpredictable, but now we have access to insights that span galactic scales." Commander Alex Thompson joined their group, his face bearing the satisfied expression of a job well done. In the months since the restoration, he had been coordinating the massive effort to rebuild galactic civilization. It was a task that required diplomacy, logistics, and patience on a scale never before attempted. "Captain, the new Galactic Council is ready to convene," Alex reported. "Representatives from 47 species are gathered in the main conference center. They're waiting for you to give the opening address." Jake felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. In the aftermath of Ben's sacrifice, the restored civilizations had looked to humanity for leadership. They had seen how one human's willingness to sacrifice himself had saved them all, and they wanted to understand what made humanity special. Jake was not sure he knew the answer, but he was determined to help build a better galaxy from the ashes of the old one. The conference center of Carter Station was unlike any meeting place in galactic history. Instead of the formal, sterile environments preferred by the old Galactic Council, this chamber was designed to accommodate the different needs and sensibilities of dozens of species. Crystalline formations allowed the Colorians to communicate through harmonic resonance. Quantum field generators let the Zephyrians interface directly with the station systems, Atmospheric zones provided the right environment for species that breathed different gases. Jake stood at the center of the chamber and looked out at the assembled representatives. 6 months ago, most of these beings had been nothing more than empty shells, their consciousness consumed by a cosmic entity that did not understand the value of individual life. Now they were here, restored but changed, ready to build something new. Fellow beings of the galaxy, Jake began, his voice carried to every corner of the chamber by translation systems that had been enhanced with post-restoration technology. We gather here not as the same civilizations that existed before the Great Silence. We are something new, something that has never existed before in the history of the universe. A harmonic chord from the Calorian delegation expressed agreement. The Zephyrian representatives glowed with approval. Even the normally stoic Mantis Collective showed signs of enthusiasm. Each of our species has been changed by our experience, Jake continued. We have gained new abilities, new perspectives, new understanding of what it means to be alive in this vast cosmos. But most importantly, we have learned the value of working together. Elder Throm-Z of the Calorians stood and spoke, his crystal body resonating with musical tones. Captain Morrison speaks truth. Before the Great Silence, my people lived in isolation, believing our crystal technology made us superior to others. Now we understand that diversity of thought and experience is the greatest strength any civilization can possess. Science leader Veltar of the Zephyrians added her own thoughts, her words accompanied by patterns of light across her skin. The entity that consumed us was ancient and powerful, but it was also terribly alone. It had no one to challenge its thoughts, no one to offer different perspectives. In its isolation, it became a destroyer without meaning to. We must ensure that we never make the same mistake. Jake nodded. That's why we're proposing a new form of galactic governance. Not a council where species compete for advantage, but a cooperative network where different forms of consciousness work together to solve problems and explore the universe. Over the next several hours, the representatives discussed and debated the structure of their new civilization. Unlike the political maneuvering that had characterized the old Galactic Council, these discussions were marked by genuine collaboration and mutual respect. The brush with extinction had taught them all the preciousness of life and the importance of preserving diversity. As the formal sessions ended, Jake found himself alone with Ryan Blake in a quiet section of the station. The security chief had become Jake's closest advisor in the months since the restoration, helping to coordinate the complex task of rebuilding galactic civilization. Ryan, do you think Ben would be proud of what we've accomplished? Jake asked, looking out at the stars through a viewing port. Ryan considered the question carefully. I think he'd be amazed by the cooperation we're seeing between species, but I also think he'd be pushing us to do even more. Ben always believed in the impossible. Jake's expression grew sad. I just wish he could see it. He gave everything to save the galaxy, and he'll never know that it worked. Are you sure about that? Came a new voice. Jake turned to see Dr. Price approaching. The scientist had arrived on Carter Station the week before, having been rescued from Earth along with several thousand other survivors who had been hidden in deep underground facilities during the entity's attack. Dr. Price, what do you mean? Jake asked. I've been studying Ben's condition extensively, Dr. Price replied. His brain activity is unlike anything we've ever recorded. Most of his normal neural functions have been burned out, but there are patterns of activity in areas of the brain we don't fully understand. Quantum resonance patterns that match the frequency of the cosmic entity. Amy joined the conversation, her scientific curiosity evident. Are you suggesting that part of Ben's consciousness is still connected to the entity? I believe so, Dr. Price said. The entity told you it was learning about concepts like love and sacrifice from Ben's mind. I think that connection remains. Ben may be experiencing the universe on a cosmic scale, aware of the restoration and the new civilization being built in ways we can't comprehend. Jake felt a spark of hope. Could he ever wake up? Could we ever communicate with him again? Dr. Price hesitated. I don't know. The damage to his brain is extensive, but the quantum patterns suggest that his consciousness still exists, just operating on a level far beyond normal human experience. 3 days later, Jake stood in the medical bay where Ben Carter lay in his permanent sleep. The young man looked peaceful, his face bearing the same expression of satisfaction it had worn since his sacrifice. Monitoring equipment showed the steady rhythms of life, but also the strange quantum patterns that Dr. Price had discovered. "Ben," Jake said quietly, "if you can hear me somehow, I want you to know what you accomplished. The galaxy is alive again. Every species that was destroyed has been restored, and they're all working together now, building something better than what came before." Jake paused, watching Ben's face for any sign of awareness. There was none, but somehow Jake felt that his words were being heard. "The entity you communicated with has moved beyond our galaxy," Jake continued. "But before it left, it did something amazing. It created communication beacons throughout intergalactic space, signals that will warn other galaxies if they ever encounter similar threats. Your sacrifice didn't just save our galaxy, Ben. It may have saved countless others." A soft chime from the monitoring equipment caught Jake's attention. For just a moment, the quantum patterns in Ben's brain had spiked, forming a brief harmonic that matched the frequency of human speech. Then the patterns returned to their normal cosmic rhythm. Dr. Price, who had been monitoring from across the room, approached with wide eyes. "Captain, did you see that? The quantum resonance just formed a pattern I've never recorded before." It was almost like he was trying to say something, Jake finished. "More than that," Dr. Price said, studying her instruments. "The pattern matched the quantum signature for gratitude in the entity's communication protocols. I think Ben was saying thank you." Jake felt tears forming in his eyes as he looked down at the young man who had saved everything. Ben Carter would never wake up, would never see the new galaxy he had made possible. But perhaps in ways that transcended normal human understanding, he was aware of what his sacrifice had accomplished. A year later, Carter Station had become the unofficial capital of the new galactic civilization. Ships from hundreds of worlds docked there daily, bringing news, trade, and cultural exchange. The cooperative network that had been proposed in those first meetings had grown into something unprecedented in galactic history, a true partnership between diverse forms of consciousness. Jake, now bearing the title of Galactic Coordinator, stood once again on the observation deck and watched the busy traffic around the station. Humanity had found its role in the new galaxy not as conquerors or rulers, but as bridges between different forms of consciousness. Their chaotic thinking patterns, once seen as a weakness, had become their greatest strength in facilitating communication and cooperation between species. Amy approached with her latest research findings. "Jake, you need to see this. We've been monitoring the quantum background radiation across the galaxy, and we're detecting something incredible." "What is it?" Jake asked. "The entire galaxy is becoming more connected," Amy explained excitedly. "The quantum fields that link all consciousness are growing stronger. It's as if the galaxy itself is becoming a kind of vast cooperative mind while still preserving the individuality of each species." Jake smiled. It was exactly the kind of impossible thing that Ben Carter would have believed in. One young human's willingness to sacrifice everything had not just saved the galaxy, it had transformed it into something beautiful and unprecedented. The stars no longer fell into darkness. They shone brighter than ever before, illuminated by the hopes and dreams of countless civilizations working together toward a future that none of them could have imagined alone. And somewhere in the quantum foam that underlies all reality, a young man's consciousness touched every star, every world, every mind in the galaxy, ensuring that the light of cooperation and understanding would never be extinguished again. Ben Carter stood in front of the consciousness amplifier and tried to control his shaking hands. The device filled the center of the old mining facility, a complex arrangement of quantum processors and neural interface equipment that hummed with barely contained energy. In 12 hours, he would either save the galaxy or die in the attempt. Probably both. Captain Jake Morrison approached him with a heavy expression. Jake had barely slept in the 3 days since they discovered Ben's unique neural patterns. The weight of asking a young man to sacrifice his life was crushing, even if Ben had volunteered willingly. You don't have to do this, Jake said quietly. We can keep looking for another solution. Ben turned to face his captain. At 25, he was one of the youngest senior officers in the human fleet, but recent events had aged him beyond his years. His usual cheerful demeanor had been replaced by a calm determination that reminded Jake of soldiers preparing for their final battle. Captain, we both know there isn't time to find another way, Ben said. The entity is getting closer to our location every day. Dr. Rogers estimates we have maybe a week before it tracks us down, and even if we escape again, we can't run forever. Jake nodded reluctantly. Amy's latest reports were troubling. The entity had consumed the remaining Calorian science team 2 days ago. The last group of Mantis survivors had gone silent yesterday. With each passing hour, the galaxy grew quieter and more empty. Besides, Ben continued with a slight smile, someone has to do it. Might as well be the guy who spent his whole career talking to people across impossible distances. This is just a really long-distance call. Dr. Amy Rogers emerged from behind the amplifier where she had been making final adjustments. Her face was pale with exhaustion and worry. She had been working around the clock to perfect the device, knowing that any mistake could kill Ben instantly instead of giving him a chance to communicate with the entity. The amplifier is ready, Amy announced to the group gathered in the chamber. We've run every test we can think of. The quantum interface should allow Ben's consciousness to connect directly with the entity's quantum field. Kethvar stepped forward, his silver skin reflecting the lights of the amplifier. The Zephyrian scientist had contributed crucial knowledge to the project, but Jake could see doubt in his large eyes. Ben Carter, Kethvar said formally. I must tell you again, we do not fully understand what will happen when your mind touches the entity's consciousness. You may experience things that no human mind was meant to comprehend. The psychological shock alone could be fatal. Ben nodded calmly. I understand the risks, but I also understand what happens if we don't try. The entity will keep consuming civilizations until nothing is left. At least this way we have a chance. Lisa Parker, the chief engineer, approached with tears in her eyes. She had worked closely with Ben for 3 years, and the young communications officer had become like a little brother to her. Ben, I've installed every safety system I could think of, Lisa said, her voice thick with emotion. If anything goes wrong, if the connection becomes too dangerous, I can shut down the amplifier in seconds. Don't you dare, Ben said firmly. If I get a connection with that thing, you let me talk to it no matter what. This might be our only chance to make it understand. Ryan Blake, the security chief, had been standing quietly in the corner. Now he stepped forward and placed a hand on Ben's shoulder. Kid, I've served with a lot of brave soldiers, Ryan said. But what you're about to do takes more courage than any battle I've ever seen. Humanity will remember this. Ben looked around, at the faces of his friends and crewmates. These people had become his family during their years together in space. Now he was about to leave them forever, but he felt no regret. If his sacrifice could save them and restore the galaxy, it was worth any price. I need to ask one favor, Ben said to Jake. If this works, if we can communicate with the entity and convince it to stop, I want you to promise me something. Anything, Jake replied. Don't let people remember this as a tragedy, Ben said. Remember it as the day humanity proved that sometimes the best way to fight an enemy is to try to understand it. Jake felt tears forming in his eyes, but he managed to speak steadily. I promise. Amy approached with the neural interface headset, a complex device that would link Ben's brain directly to the amplifier. Ben, once I activate this, there's no going back. Are you ready? Ben took a deep breath and nodded. Let's save the galaxy. The next few minutes passed in tense preparation. Ben was secured in the amplifier's central chair, with the neural interface carefully positioned on his head. Monitoring equipment tracked his vital signs and brain activity. The quantum processors hummed with increasing energy as Amy brought the system online. Amplifier at 20% power, Amy announced. Ben, how do you feel? Fine so far, Ben replied, though Jake could see tension in his face. It's like having a mild headache. Increasing to 40%, Amy said. Ben's expression changed, slightly. I can feel something. It's like there's static at the edge of my thoughts. Kethvar monitored the quantum readings. The interface is establishing connection with the entity's field. Ben, you should begin to sense its presence soon. 60% power, Amy announced. Ben's eyes widened. Oh God, I can feel it. It's so big, so old. It's been alone for so long. Jake stepped forward. Ben, can you communicate with it? Not yet. It doesn't understand what I am. To the entity, I'm just a small noise in the quantum field. I need more power. Amy hesitated. Ben, 80% is the maximum safe level. Beyond that, we risk permanent brain damage. Do it, Ben said, firmly. We didn't come this far to play it safe. 80% power, Amy said reluctantly. Ben's entire body tensed. His eyes rolled back, showing only white, and for a moment, Jake thought they had lost him. Then Ben spoke, but his voice was different, deeper and more resonant. Contact established, Ben said. The entity is aware of me now, it's curious. It has never encountered consciousness like mine before. Jake moved closer to the amplifier. Ben, can you tell it that we're trying to communicate? I'm trying. It's difficult. The entity thinks in patterns that span thousands of years. My thoughts are too fast, too chaotic for it to easily understand. Amy watched the monitoring equipment with growing alarm. Ben, your neural activity is off the charts. I don't think you can maintain this connection much longer. I have to try, Ben replied, sweat beading on his forehead. Wait. Something's changing. The entity is slowing down its thoughts, trying to match my frequency. It wants to understand. Suddenly, Ben's face went completely blank. His eyes stared ahead without seeing, and his breathing became shallow and rapid. The monitoring equipment began beeping frantically. Ben, Jake shouted. Can you hear me? When Ben spoke again, his voice carried an echo that seemed to come from vast distances. The entity is sharing its memories with me. I can see everything. Billions of years of existence in the spaces between stars. It's so lonely, Jake. It has been alone since before our galaxy was formed. Kethvar studied his instruments. The quantum connection is deepening. Ben's consciousness is becoming partially merged with the entity's. The entity doesn't understand death, Ben continued, his voice growing weaker. It has never experienced mortality. When it absorbs consciousness, it thinks it's preserving those minds, adding them to its own existence. It doesn't realize it's destroying them. Jake felt his heart racing. Ben, can you make it understand? Can you show it what death means to us? I'm trying. I'm showing it human memories. Birth, childhood, growing up, forming relationships. The entity is confused. It doesn't understand why we value individual existence when we could all be part of something greater. Amy checked her instruments again. Ben, your brain activity is becoming dangerously unstable. You need to break the connection soon. Not yet, Ben gasped. I'm starting to get through to it. The entity is beginning to understand that individual consciousness is precious, that destroying it is wrong. Ben's body convulsed, and blood began trickling from his nose. The neural interface sparked with energy discharges. Ben, that's enough, Lisa shouted from her control station. I'm shutting down the amplifier. No, Ben screamed with more force than should have been possible. It's working. The entity understands now. It's horrified by what it has done. Jake could see that Ben was dying. The young man's face was pale, and his vital signs were failing. But something incredible was happening on the quantum sensors. The entity's energy patterns were changing, becoming less aggressive and more curious. The entity wants to make amends, Ben whispered, his voice barely audible. It's asking me how to undo the damage it has caused. I'm telling it about the empty worlds, the missing civilizations. Kethavar's instruments detected massive quantum fluctuations across the galaxy. Something is happening. The entity's field is expanding, but the patterns are different, less destructive. Ben's eyes suddenly focused on Jake with startling clarity. Jake, the entity can reverse what it did. It can restore the consciousness it absorbed. But it needs to understand the concept of restoration. of giving back instead of taking. How do we teach it that? Jake asked desperately. I'm showing it. Human concepts, love, sacrifice, hope. The idea that sometimes you give up something precious to help others. Ben smiled weakly. It's starting to understand. The entity wants to learn how to give instead of take. The amplifier began making alarming sounds, and sparks flew from several components. Amy worked frantically to stabilize the system. Ben, the amplifier is overloading, Amy called out. The connection is becoming too powerful for the equipment to handle. Just a little longer, Ben pleaded. The entity is changing. It's learning what it means to create instead of destroy. I'm showing it the beauty of individual minds, the value of diversity, the strength that comes from choosing to work together instead of being forced to merge. Suddenly, Ben's body arched in the chair and he cried out in a voice that echoed with cosmic harmonies. It understands. The entity sees what it has done wrong. It's going to fix everything. The amplifier exploded in a shower of sparks and smoke. Ben's body went limp in the chair, but his face wore an expression of peaceful satisfaction. Amy rushed to check his vital signs while Lisa worked to contain the electrical fires. Ben, Jake called out, but there was no response. The young man who had saved the galaxy was gone. Amy looked up from her medical scanner with tears in her eyes. He's alive, but barely. The neural feedback burned out most of his brain functions. He's in a deep coma, and I don't think he'll ever wake up. Jake felt grief and hope warring in his chest. Ben had paid the ultimate price, but had it worked? Kethvar provided the answer. Captain, I'm detecting massive quantum changes across the galaxy. The entity's field is reversing its previous patterns. Instead of consuming consciousness, it appears to be restoring it. Jake moved to the communication station that Ben had abandoned. This is Captain Morrison to all human vessels. Report your status immediately. The responses came quickly. Captain, this is the cargo ship Dawn Treader. We're reading massive energy, fluctuations but no hostile activity. Morrison, this is Commander Thompson on the patrol ship Guardian. Something incredible is happening. I'm getting communication signals from the Zephyrian homeworld. They're back, Captain. The Zephyrians are back. Jake felt his knees go weak with relief and amazement. Ben had done it. Somehow, one young human had convinced a cosmic entity to reverse billions of years of destruction. But as Jake looked at Ben's unconscious form, he knew the price had been terrible. The man who had saved the galaxy would never know that his sacrifice had succeeded. The stars were no longer falling into darkness. Thanks to Ben Carter's courage, they were beginning to shine again. The abandoned mining facility on asteroid 7739X had been empty for over 50 years, but now it buzzed with desperate activity. Captain Jake Morrison stood in what had once been the main processing center and watched as his people worked to turn the old facility into humanity's new hidden base. The emergency evacuation from Haven Station had been successful, but barely. 3 empty human ships had arrived, just as the last survivors escaped. Final count, Captain, reported Commander Alex Thompson, looking up from his portable computer. We managed to save 38 ships and just over 7,000 people. We lost 5 vessels during the evacuation. Jake felt the weight of those lost lives. 5 ships meant nearly 400 people, probably the last members of their families gone forever. But there was no time to mourn. The entity was hunting them and they needed answers fast. Any word from the other survivor groups? Jake asked. Ben Carter shook his head from his temporary communication station. Nothing. From the Calorian science team. The Mantis explorers went silent yesterday. I think we might be the LA, or a just group of survivors left in the galaxy. Dr. Amy Rogers approached Jake with a concerned expression. She had been working non-stop with Kethvar since their arrival at the asteroid base, trying to understand their enemy. Her usually neat appearance was disheveled, and her eyes showed the strain of too little sleep and too much fear. Jake, we need to talk, Amy said quietly. Kethvar and I have made some discoveries. Some of them might be good news. Jake followed Amy to a small chamber that had been converted into a science laboratory. Kethvar stood before a holographic display showing complex quantum equations. The Zephyrian silver skin seemed dimmer than before, and Jake wondered if the alien was affected by the stress of being possibly the last of his species. "Show him what we found," Amy said to Kethavar. The alien manipulated the holographic display, and the equations changed to show a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red zones marked areas where civilizations had vanished. The pattern was clear and terrifying. The entity was moving systematically through populated space, leaving nothing but empty worlds behind. "This confirms what we suspected," Kethavar said in his precise voice. "The entity is not attacking randomly. It is following a deliberate pattern, consuming civilizations in order of their mental complexity and organization." "But there's something else," Amy added, manipulating the display to highlight several small areas that remained green. "Look at these spots. They're places where we know survivors still exist, but the entity hasn't attacked them yet." Jake studied the display. "Why would it skip over inhabited areas?" "Because they're too small," Kethavar explained. "Our analysis suggests the entity requires a minimum concentration of consciousness to sustain itself efficiently. Individual minds or small groups are not worth the energy expenditure." Amy leaned forward excitedly. "That's why we're still alive, Jake. As long as we stay in small, scattered groups, we're below the entity's hunting threshold." Jake felt a spark of hope. "So we have a chance if we stay hidden and avoid gathering in large numbers." "Yes, but there's more," Amy said. "Kethavar's research has revealed something incredible about human consciousness that we never knew." Kethavar activated another display, this one showing brainwave patterns from different species. "During my years of studying galactic civilizations, I collected data on the neural patterns of many species. Look at these readings." Jake saw the brainwave patterns of Zephyrians, Calorians, and a dozen other species. They were all remarkably similar, organized, efficient, with clean, repetitive patterns. "Now look at this," Kethavar said, adding human brainwave patterns to the display. Jake stared in amazement. The human patterns were completely different. Where other species showed clean, organized waves, human consciousness appeared as chaotic, random noise with sudden spikes and unexpected variations. "Human minds are unlike anything else in the galaxy," Kethavar explained. "Your thoughts jump randomly from topic to topic. You experience multiple emotions simultaneously. You can hold contradictory ideas in your minds without distress. What other species would consider mental chaos, you consider normal thinking, and that protects us from the entity?" Jake asked. "To some degree, yes," Amy replied. "The entity feeds on organized consciousness. It knows how to absorb the clean, efficient thought patterns of species like the Zephyrians and Calorians. But human consciousness is so chaotic that it's like trying to eat static electricity." Jake felt excitement building. "Could we use this somehow? Turn our chaotic thinking into a weapon?" Kethavar hesitated. "There is a theoretical possibility. If we could amplify human consciousness and broadcast it across subspace, it might confuse or even damage the entity. But such a device would be incredibly dangerous to build, and we have no guarantee it would work." Before Jake could respond, Ben's urgent voice echoed through the facility's communication system. "Captain Morrison to communications immediately. We're receiving a transmission from Earth." Jake ran to the communications center, followed by Amy and Kethavar. Ben was working frantically at his equipment, trying to clean up a signal that was filled with static and interference. "It's very weak, Captain," Ben said. "The signal is coming from deep underground somewhere in the North American mountains." The transmission cleared enough for them to see a face on the screen. It was Dr. Helen Price, one of Earth's leading experts on consciousness research. Jake had met her several years ago at a scientific conference. She looked exhausted and frightened, but her voice was steady. "This is Dr. Helen Price broadcasting from Emergency Research Station 7, she said. "If anyone receives this transmission, please respond. We have made critical discoveries about the entity that has attacked our worlds." Ben quickly established a return signal. "Dr. Price, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Horizon. We're reading you clearly. What's your status?" Relief flooded Dr. Price's face. "Captain Morrison, thank God. We thought we might be the only survivors. Listen carefully. We don't have much time. The entity detected our previous transmissions and is actively searching for us. Doctor, how many survivors do you have? Jake asked.
43 people in this facility, she replied. We've been working around the clock since the attack to understand what we're dealing with. Captain, this entity is not from our galaxy. It's ancient beyond imagination, possibly billions of years old.
Amy leaned toward the communication pickup. Dr. Price, this is Dr. Amy Rogers. We've made similar discoveries about the entity's nature. It feeds on organized consciousness. Exactly right, Dr. Price confirmed. But we've learned something else. The entity is not evil in any way we would understand. It's simply trying to survive. It feeds on consciousness because that's the only way it knows how to exist. Jake felt confused. Are you saying it doesn't mean to destroy civilizations? That's correct, Doctor, Price said. The entity doesn't understand that it's killing entire species. To a being that exists primarily in quantum space, the difference between absorbing consciousness and sharing it may not be clear. Kethavar stepped forward. Dr. Price, I am Kethavar of the Zephyrian Empire. Are you suggesting the entity could be reasoned with? Dr. Price's expression grew hopeful. Possibly. Our analysis suggests that if we could communicate with it directly, we might be able to make it understand the harm it's causing. But establishing communication would require someone to link their consciousness directly to the entity's quantum field. That sounds incredibly dangerous, Jake said. It would almost certainly be fatal, Dr. Price admitted. The human mind wasn't designed to interface with quantum consciousness. But we've developed a device that might make it possible. We call it the consciousness amplifier. Amy asked, how does it work? The amplifier would take human brain patterns and convert them into quantum fluctuations that the entity could understand, Dr. Price explained. But it requires a very specific type of neural structure to operate safely. The brain patterns would need to have exactly the right combination of chaos and stability. Jake felt his heart sink. How specific? Our calculations suggest only about 1 person in 10 million would have the required neural characteristics. Doctor, Price said. We've tested everyone in our facility. None of us are compatible. Ben looked up from his communication controls. Doctor, I hate to interrupt, but I'm detecting energy signatures approaching your location. The same quantum patterns we've seen from the entity. Dr. Price's face went pale. It's found us. Captain, we're going to try to evacuate to the backup facility, but I need to send you the amplifier specifications first. If there's any chance of stopping this thing, someone needs to build another device. Transmitting now, Dr. Price said, and Jake could hear the sound of explosions in the background of her transmission. Captain, remember, the key is finding someone with the right neural patterns. Without that, the amplifier won't work. The transmission began breaking up. Jake could see Dr. Price's facility shaking around her. Doctor, get your people out of there. We're trying, Captain. Good luck. Humanity's future depends on finding a way to communicate with this entity. Make it understand that we're not just food. We're living beings with hopes and dreams, and the transmission cut off completely. Ben worked desperately to re-establish contact, but after several minutes he turned to Jake with sadness in his eyes. I'm sorry, Captain. All signals from Earth have stopped. I think Dr. Price's facility has been found. Jake stood in silence for a moment, mourning the loss of yet another group of survivors. But Dr. Price's sacrifice had given them something precious, hope and a plan. Did you get the amplifier specifications? Jake asked Ben. Yes, sir. Complete technical details. Jake turned to Amy and Kethavar. Can we build this device? Amy studied the transmitted data on her portable computer. It's complex, but with Kethavar's knowledge of quantum technology and the resources from our ships, it's possible. But Jake, we still need someone with the right neural patterns to operate. Then we test everyone, Jake said firmly. Every single person in our group. Someone has to have the right brain structure. Kethavar looked concerned. Captain Morrison, even if we find someone compatible, using the device would likely kill them. Are you prepared to ask someone to make that sacrifice? Jake looked around, at the faces of his people. They were scared, tired, and far from home. But they were also determined. They had already lost everything: their worlds, their families, their civilization. What they had left was each other, and the chance to make sure humanity's sacrifice meant something. If it means saving what's left of the galaxy, Jake said, I think we'll find someone willing to try. We're human. Doing impossible things is what we do best. Over the next 2 days, Jake's people worked frantically to build the consciousness amplifier while Amy and a team of volunteers tested the neural patterns of every survivor. The device took shape in the facility's main chamber, a complex array of quantum processors and neural interface equipment that looked more like a piece of art than a scientific instrument. But as the testing continued, Jake's hope began to fade. They had tested over 3,000 people, and no one had the required neural characteristics. The patterns needed were too specific, too rare. Then Ben Carter approached Jake with a nervous expression. Captain, Ben said quietly, I'd like to volunteer for testing. Jake looked at his young communications officer. Ben had been the voice that held them together during their darkest moments, the one who had maintained contact with other survivors and kept hope alive. Of course, Ben, but don't expect miracles. We've tested thousands of people. 20 minutes later, Amy came running to find Jake, her face bright with excitement and fear. Jake, she said breathlessly. We found him. Ben has the exact neural patterns we need. He's our 1 in 10 million. Jake felt joy and terror in equal measure. They had found their answer, but using it would cost them one of their best people. Ben Carter, barely 25 years old, was their only hope of saving the galaxy. The question now was whether Jake could ask a young man to sacrifice his life for a plan that might not even work. The UES horizon dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Haven system. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge and felt a small measure of relief when he saw the old mining station still active among the asteroids. Lights moved along its docking arms, and ships were coming and going from its bays. At least some part of human civilization was still alive. Captain, I'm reading 17 ships docked at the station, Ben Carter reported from his communications post. Most of them are civilian vessels, but I'm detecting at least 3 military signatures. Any word from Earth or the Council worlds? Jake asked, though he already knew the answer from Ben's expression. Nothing, sir. Complete silence from all major population centers. But I am picking up scattered transmissions from ships like ours, small groups trying to find each other. Jake nodded grimly. Get me Haven Station control. The view screen flickered to life, showing the weathered face of Station Commander Diana Ross. She was a tough woman in her 50s who had spent most of her life on the frontier. Her expression showed the strain of recent events. Captain Morrison, thank God, Diana said. We've been trying to coordinate what's left of the fleet. Every day brings more bad news and fewer survivors. Commander, what's the situation? Jake asked. Diana's face darkened. As far as we can tell, Earth went silent 4 days ago. The core, colonies followed within hours. We've lost contact with over 60% of human space. The only survivors are ships that were in deep space or stationed on the outer rim when it happened. Jake felt his heart sink. Earth, humanity's birth world, the center of their civilization, was gone. How many ships do we have? 43 vessels of various types, Diana replied. Most are exploration ships like yours, some cargo haulers, a few passenger liners that were between systems. We also have 3 military vessels that escaped from the core. I want to speak with the military commanders immediately, Jake said. 20 minutes later, Jake found himself in Haven Station's main conference room, facing the survivors of humanity's space fleet. The room was crowded with captains and senior officers from dozens of ships. The mood was dark, but Jake could see determination in their faces. Humans did not give up easily. Commander Alex Thompson stepped forward. He was a tall man with gray hair and serious eyes. Jake recognized him as the former captain of the battlecruiser UES Defiant, one of humanity's most powerful warships. Captain Morrison, I'm glad you made it, Alex said. We need every experienced captain we can get. What happened to your ship, Commander? Jake asked. Alex's face grew dark with memory. The Defiant was part of a defense fleet protecting the Nexus worlds. We had advance warning that something was coming, so we prepared for battle. 47 ships, the best weapons humanity had ever built, all ready to fight whatever threatened our people. He paused, and Jake could see the pain in the man's eyes. It didn't matter, Alex continued. The enemy appeared as a kind of dark cloud in space bigger than anything we had ever seen. We opened fire with everything we had. Particle beams, missiles, plasma cannons. Our weapons passed right through it like it wasn't even there. Then what happened? Asked Captain Maria Santos, commander of the cargo vessel Lucky Strike. The ships closest to the cloud just stopped, Alex said quietly. Not destroyed, not damaged. They simply stopped moving, stopped transmitting, stopped existing as far as we could tell. The crews were gone, but the ships remained intact. Empty, shells floating in space. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. How did you escape? Pure luck, Alex replied. The Defiant was undergoing repairs in a supply station when the attack began. We were too far away to join the initial battle. By the time we could respond, it was over. 46 ships had been turned into empty hulks in less than 10 minutes. Dr. Amy Rogers, who had accompanied Jake to the meeting, spoke up. Commander, did you detect any unusual energy readings during the attack? Alex nodded. Our science officer recorded massive quantum fluctuations just before each ship went silent. The readings suggest something that operates outside normal space-time, just like you described from the Calorian homeworld. A new voice joined the conversation. If I may, I believe I can provide some insight into our enemy. Everyone turned to see a figure they had not noticed before. It was clearly not human. The being stood about 7 feet tall, with silver skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. Its large eyes held an intelligence that spoke of centuries of knowledge. I am Kethvar, formerly a scientist with the Zephyrian Empire, the alien said in perfect English. I may be the last of my people. Jake had heard of the Zephyrians. They were masters of quantum technology, capable of manipulating matter at the subatomic level. Their empire had been one of the most advanced in the galaxy. How did you survive? Jake asked. I was conducting research in a deep space laboratory when my homeworld was attacked, Kethavar explained. The laboratory was shielded against quantum interference for my experiments. That shielding may have protected me from whatever consumed my people. Amy leaned forward with interest. What can you tell us about the enemy? Kethavar's expression grew grave. My people had encountered something like this before, though not on this scale. Ancient records speak of entities that exist primarily in the quantum foam beneath reality. They feed on organized consciousness, converting the mental energy of living beings into their own existence. You mean it eats minds? Asked Captain Santos. In a manner of speaking, yes, Kethavar replied. But it is more complex than that. The entity absorbs the patterns of thought that make up consciousness. It leaves the body intact but takes away the spark of awareness that makes a being truly alive. Jake processed this information. If that's true, then conventional weapons would be useless against it. You can't shoot something that exists in quantum space. Exactly. Kethavar agreed. But there may be hope. My research suggests that different species have varying degrees of resistance to this kind of attack. Some minds are easier to absorb than others. Before anyone could ask what he meant, Ben Carter's voice came over the station's communication system. All senior officers to the command center immediately. We have an emergency. They rushed to Haven Station's command center where Ben was working frantically at a communication console. His face was pale with fear. Captain, I've been monitoring long-range sensors, Ben said. The entity is moving faster than we calculated. It's not heading for the galactic core anymore. It's already there. Earth's solar system went dark 6 hours ago. The room fell silent. Jake felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. Earth, humanity's birth world, the planet where his own family lived, was gone. Are you certain? Jake asked quietly. Yes, sir. All automated monitoring stations in the Sol system have stopped transmitting, the same pattern we've seen everywhere else. Commander Thompson spoke up. Then we're truly on our own. No reinforcements, no support from home. Just what we have here. Jake looked around the room at the faces of humanity's survivors. They were scared, grieving, and far from home. But he also saw something else in their eyes. Determination. The same stubborn refusal to give up that had carried humanity from their single world to the stars. "How many people do we have total?" Jake asked Diana. "Approximately 8,000 across all the ships," she replied. "Most are civilians, but we have about 1,500 trained military personnel." "Not much of an army to save the galaxy," muttered Captain Santos. "Maybe not," Jake said, "but it's what we have. Kethavar, you mentioned that some species might be more resistant to this entity than others. What did you mean?" The Zephyrian scientist considered his words carefully. "From what I observed during my people's encounter with a similar entity, species with more chaotic thought patterns seemed to last longer before being absorbed. My people's minds were highly organized, efficient. We were consumed quickly. But humans, from what I have studied, have much more random thought processes." Amy looked interested. "You mean our mental chaos might actually protect us?" "It is possible," Kethavar replied. "The entity feeds on organized consciousness. Chaotic thoughts might be harder for it to absorb and process." Jake felt a spark of hope. "Could we use that somehow? Turn our apparent weakness into a strength?" "I do not know," Kethavar admitted. "But it may be worth investigating." Commander Thompson stepped forward. "Captain Morrison, I think I speak for everyone here when I say we need a leader. Someone to coordinate our efforts and give us direction. Your reputation as an explorer and problem solver is well known." Jake looked around the room. These people were looking to him for answers he did not have, for hope in a situation that seemed hopeless. But that was what leadership meant, making decisions when no good options existed. "Very well," Jake said. "Here's what we're going to do. We'll establish Haven Station as our temporary headquarters. All ships will contribute supplies and personnel to a common pool. We'll organize search parties to look for other survivors. And we'll work with Kethavar to understand this entity and find a way to fight it." "And if we can't find a way to fight it?" asked Captain Santos. Jake met her eyes steadily. "Then we'll find a way to run. Humanity will survive, even if we have to flee to another galaxy to do it. But I don't intend to give up without a fight." Over the next several days, Haven Station became a hive of activity. Ships came and went, bringing news of other survivor groups scattered across the galaxy. The news was rarely good. Entire sectors had gone silent. Species that had existed for millions of years had vanished without a trace. But Jake also received reports that gave him hope. Small groups of various alien species had survived, usually because they had been in isolated locations when the attack came. A Calorian science team studying a distant star. A group of mantis explorers on the edge of known space. Even a few Zephyrians who had been conducting deep space research. Amy worked closely with Kethavar, studying the quantum signatures left behind by the entity. Their research suggested that the creature was not just consuming civilizations randomly. It was following a pattern, moving from one population center to another in a deliberate search for something. "It's looking for the largest concentrations of organized consciousness," Amy explained to Jake during one of their daily briefings. "The more advanced and organized a civilization is, the more attractive it becomes as a target. Which means it will keep hunting until it finds every last survivor," Jake realized. "Unless we can give it a reason to stop," Amy said. Jake was about to ask what she meant when Ben's voice echoed through the station's speakers. "Captain Morrison to the command center immediately. We have incoming ships, and they're not responding to our signals." Jake rushed to the command center where he found Ben staring at his sensor displays with a mixture of confusion and fear. "Report," Jake ordered. "Sir, I'm reading 3 ships approaching the station. They match the signatures of human vessels, but they're not responding to any communication attempts. They're moving in perfect formation, which is strange because the ships are from different classes and different fleets." Jake felt a cold fear growing in his chest. "Put them on screen." The view screen showed 3 human ships moving toward Haven Station. They looked normal from the outside, but something about their movement was wrong. They flew in perfect synchronization, like they were being controlled by a single mind. "Captain," Ben said quietly, I'm not reading any life signs from any of those ships. Jake understood immediately. The entity had found them. It was using empty human ships as scouts, searching for the remaining survivors. The hunt had begun, and humanity's last refuge was no longer safe. All ships, emergency departure, Jake ordered. This station is compromised. Scatter and rendezvous at the backup coordinates. As alarms rang throughout Haven Station and ships began their emergency launch procedures. Jake knew that humanity's fight for survival had entered a new and dangerous phase. They were no longer just running from an unknown enemy. They were being actively hunted by an intelligence that could turn their own technology against them. The real battle was about to begin. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon and watched the stars through the main view screen. He had been exploring space for 23 years, but he had never seen anything like what lay before him now. The Calorian system should have been full of activity. Hundreds of ships should have been moving between planets. Communication signals should have been filling space with the busy chatter of a thriving civilization. Instead, there was only silence. "Still nothing, Captain," said Ben Carter from his position at the communication station. The young officer had been trying to contact anyone, in the Calorian system for the past 4 hours. His face showed the strain of failure. No response on any frequency. It's like the entire system just stopped talking. Jake rubbed his tired eyes and looked around the bridge of his ship. The Horizon was an exploration vessel, built for long missions in deep space. His crew of 42 people had been together for 3 years, and they had become like family. But now, looking at their worried faces, Jake felt the weight of command, more than ever before. "Dr. Rogers, what do your long-range scans show?" Jake asked. Amy Rogers looked up from her science station. She was a brilliant woman in her 30s with short brown hair and serious eyes. As the ship's lead scientist, she had studied dozens of alien species and their technologies. But what she was seeing now made no sense to her. "Captain, the scans show normal planetary activity," Amy said, her voice filled with confusion. "The Calorian homeworld is there. The cities are intact. The power systems are running normally. But there are no life signs from any intelligent beings. Not one Calorian anywhere in the system." Lisa Parker, the ship's chief engineer, turned from her station. She was a small woman with quick hands and a sharp mind. She had kept the Horizon running through more dangerous situations than Jake cared to remember. "Sir, I'm reading all the automated systems as operational," Lisa said. "Traffic control, planetary defense grids, communication networks. Everything is working perfectly. It's as if everyone just walked away from their jobs at the same time." Felt a cold fear growing in his stomach. The Calorians were one of the oldest species in the galaxy. They had been building their crystal cities for thousands of years. Their technology was far beyond what humans could create. They did not just abandon their homes. "Ryan, what's your assessment?" Jake asked his security chief. Ryan Blake was a big man with steady hands and careful eyes. He had served in the Colonial Marines before joining the Horizon's crew. He understood danger in all its forms, but this situation made him deeply uncomfortable. "Captain, this doesn't feel right," Ryan said slowly. "No species disappears without a trace. There should be signs of evacuation or battle or some kind of disaster. But there's nothing. It's like they were all just erased." Jake made his decision. "Prepare a landing party. Amy, Lisa, Ryan, you're with me. Ben, keep monitoring all frequencies. If anyone tries to contact us, I want to know immediately." The shuttle bay breeze carried them down to the surface of Calorian Prime. As they descended through the atmosphere, they could see the famous crystal cities spread out below them. The Calorians grew their buildings rather than constructing them, using a technology that humans still did not fully understand. The result was breathtaking. Towers of living crystal rose from the ground like frozen music, beautiful and alien. They landed in the central plaza of New Caloran, the planet's capital. Jake stepped out of the shuttle and looked around. The silence was complete. No voices, no footsteps, no sounds of daily life. Only the wind moving through the crystal spires. "Stay together," Jake ordered. "We don't know what we're dealing with here." They walked through streets that should have been filled with Calorians going about their daily business. The crystal pathways were clean and perfect. Shop displays still showed their wares. Vehicles sat abandoned in the middle of roads, their doors open as if their drivers had simply stepped out and vanished. Amy pulled out her handheld scanner and began taking readings. Jake, the energy patterns here are very strange. There's something in the quantum field that doesn't belong. It's like the space itself has been changed somehow. They entered the government center, a massive crystal structure at the heart of the city. Inside, the halls were filled with natural light that filtered through the crystal walls. Their footsteps echoed in the empty corridors as they made their way to the main council chamber. What they found there made them all stop and stare in shock. The Calorian High Council consisted of 12 members, each representing a different region of their world. The council chamber held 12 crystal chairs arranged around a circular table. Each chair still held the perfect impression of a Calorian body, as if someone had been sitting there just moments before. The table was set for a meeting. Documents lay open. Cups of the Calorians' favorite drink sat half empty. "My God," Lisa whispered. They were in the middle of a meeting. Amy ran her scanner over the nearest chair. The readings made her frown, with confusion. "Captain, the energy signature here is completely unknown. It's not like anything in our databases. Whatever did this operates on principles we don't understand." Ryan examined the room with a soldier's eye for detail. No signs of struggle, no weapon marks. The security systems are still active and undamaged. Whatever happened here, the Calorians didn't fight it. They spent the next several hours exploring the city. Every building told the same impossible story. Normal life had been interrupted at exactly the same moment. In homes, they found meals half prepared. In schools, children's artwork lay scattered on desks as if the young artists had simply vanished in the middle of their projects. In hospitals, medical equipment continued to monitor empty beds. The pattern was the same everywhere. At 14:32 local time 3 days ago, every Calorian on the planet had simply ceased to exist. Back on the horizon, Jake called his senior officers to the briefing room. The mood was dark as they gathered around the conference table. Everyone knew they had discovered something beyond their experience or understanding. "Report," Jake said, though he dreaded what he was about to hear. Amy spoke first, her scientific training helping her stay calm despite the disturbing evidence. "The energy readings are consistent throughout the entire planet," she said. "Whatever affected the Calorians happened to all of them at exactly the same time. The quantum signatures suggest something that exists partially outside our normal space-time." Lisa pulled up a holographic display of the planet's computer networks. "I was able to access their information systems," she said. "The Calorians kept detailed records of everything. According to their files, they had been receiving reports of similar disappearances from other worlds. The Zephyrian Empire went silent 2 weeks ago. The Mantis Collective stopped responding 9 days ago. At least a dozen other species have vanished in the past month." Ryan added his own observations. "Captain, I've served in enough combat zones to recognize the aftermath of battle. This isn't that. There's no destruction, no evidence of resistance. It's as if every Calorian simply stopped existing at the same moment." Jake felt the fear in his chest grow stronger. "Ben, have you been able to contact anyone else?" Ben's voice came through the intercom from the bridge, and Jake could hear the worry in the young man's words. "Sir, I've been monitoring long-range communications since we arrived. The situation is worse than we thought. At least 20 major civilizations have gone completely silent in the past 6 weeks. The pattern is spreading, and it's moving toward the galactic core." The galactic core, where Earth was located, where humanity's greatest colonies flourished, where the Galactic Council maintained its headquarters. "How long do we have?" Jake asked, though he was afraid of the answer. Amy ran quick calculations on her portable computer. If the pattern continues at its current rate, it will reach human space in approximately 4 to 6 weeks. Before anyone could respond, Ben's excited voice filled the room through the communication system. "Captain, I'm receiving a transmission. It's very weak and full of static, but it's from Admiral Kate Sullivan at Council Headquarters. Jake rushed to the bridge, followed by his officers. The main view screen flickered to life, showing the face of Admiral Sullivan. But the image was broken and distorted. Her voice came through in fragments, cutting in and out. Emergency transmission to all human vessels. The Admiral's voice crackled through the static. Unknown threat approaching Council space. Conventional weapons ineffective. Multiple species confirmed lost. If anyone receives this message, avoid populated systems. Repeat. Avoid populated systems. The enemy targets high concentrations of intelligent life. The transmission grew weaker. Admiral Sullivan's face flickered on the screen as she continued. We're implementing emergency protocols, all civilian populations being moved to deep shelters, military forces preparing defensive positions. But we don't know how to fight something that can make entire civilizations disappear. Her voice became more urgent. To any ship receiving this, gather survivors and find a way to stop this thing. Earth's greatest minds are working on the problem, but we need more time. We need... The transmission cut off completely. The view screen went dark, leaving only silence on the bridge. Ben worked frantically at his controls, trying to re-establish contact. His fingers flew over the communication panels as he attempted to reach Council headquarters through every possible channel. After 10 minutes of desperate effort, he turned to Jake with fear in his eyes. Captain, I can't reach anyone. Not Council, headquarters, not Earth, not any of the major human colonies. The entire communication network has gone silent. Jake stared at the blank view screen and felt the full weight of their situation settle on his shoulders. Just hours ago, they had been investigating what seemed like an isolated mystery. Now it appeared they might be among the last free humans in the galaxy. Sir, Amy said quietly, if the pattern holds, and if this thing has already reached human space, then we may be looking at the end of human civilization as we know it. Lisa spoke up from her engineering station. Captain, what are your orders? Jake looked around at his crew. These people had followed him across the galaxy, trusted him with their lives in countless dangerous situations. Now he had to make a decision that could determine the fate of their entire species. Set course for the nearest human outpost, Jake ordered. Haven Station on the rim. If anyone survived whatever hit our core worlds, that's where they'll be. Maximum speed. As the Horizon's engines powered up and the ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, Jake remained on the bridge staring out at the stars. Behind them, Calorian. Prime continued its silent orbit around its sun, a beautiful tomb holding secrets that might be the key to humanity's survival. Whatever was consuming civilizations across the galaxy had demonstrated power beyond imagination. It could make entire species disappear without a trace, leaving behind only empty cities and unanswered questions. Now it was moving toward human space, and Jake had no idea how to fight something that seemed to exist beyond the laws of physics, as they understood them. But humans had survived impossible odds before. They had fought their way from a single world to become a major power in the galaxy. They had earned respect among species far older and more advanced than themselves. If there was a way to stop this cosmic threat, Jake was determined to find it. The race against extinction had begun.